we'll get this thing rolling. Like I said before, my name is Craig Roost. They call me Rooster. I'm a designer and product rep sales guy for Council Tools. And I'm going to be sharing with you some information about the premium axes that you guys carry, so that you have understanding of the tool, the specs, so that you can relay that to the customers if they got questions or need advice. Okay. We have two main premium lines. One's called the Velvet Cut line, and those are axes that are traditionally North American patterns. They're the Dayton, the Double Bit, and the Hudson Bay are the three main patterns of axes. The other line is called the Woodcraft line, and that's a little bit more of a unique design that's got a lot of Scandinavian influence, but uses the geometries of the North American patterns because the wood we have here in the United States is different than Northern Europe. So we're going to go through each one individually, and if you guys got questions, if I missed something or Monk, we talked about stuff, if you know that there's information that would be vital to your salespeople, make sure you just chime in and we'll back up, okay?
I want you to know, he said my salespeople.
Right.
Just so you know.
Right. We can edit that later.
We'll cut that out.
Right. So we're going to start with the smallest and go up. This is called a Velvet Cut, which is the model, or the line, a Hudson Bay belt hatchet. And the Hudson Bay is the pattern, the shape of the head, which is more of a modern version of a Hudson Bay. It comes with a full sheath. This is a 1.25-pound head on a 14-inch handle. It's 5160 tool steel, so it's a higher grade steel than our traditional ones. In fact, it's even a higher grade than most of the Swedish axes that are out there. It's got chromium in it, so it's got a higher edge retention, so you don't have to sharpen it as often. Okay. This typically is a smaller axe that is it's really easy to pack. Doesn't weigh very much. It actually has its lineage in the Norland Voyager. Norland is a company that went out of business a number of years ago, but right now those axes are very popular on eBay. You can't buy a head on eBay for less than 60 bucks. But because those are so popular, I decided to make a little bit bigger version of that so that people can still utilize the pattern. And it's mostly for light chopping, kindling. I've even seen guys use it to process fish. So this is a good option for people who want to carry light, still want to be able to make a small fire. Next one is what we call a saddle axe, and it's a double bit axe. And the tradition behind it is that timber cruisers, or guys that would go into the woods to find out how much timber was in there for a sale, they would sometimes be on horseback because of the deep wood, the deep snow that they would have to go through. So they would carry this in a saddlebag on the horse. So that's why it's called a saddle axe. And it comes with a full double bit mask, and it's set up that if you use the middle hole there, you should be able to put it on and then tighten it. This way the two masks can stay together. Now this one's a little bit more unique. This has got what's called phantom bevels on it. Those are indents that help create a higher center line on the center. A higher center line allows it to release from the wood easier. It's not so much to reduce the overall weight as it is to benefit from releasing, whether it be splitting or chopping. Most double bits nowadays are identical on each side, and then it's the responsibility of the end user to then dial in if they want to change one or the other, whether one be for limbing and one for splitting and such. This one's set up for limbing on this side, so it's got a 25-degree flat grind and a thinner cheek, and this has got a 32-degree flat grind and a thicker cheek. So if you look down from the top, you can see that the geometry is different from this one, So it's already set up to be two different hatchets on the same handle. It's on a 16-inch handle, and it's got a really big palm swell on there, and I think it swings like a smithing hammer. So because of the fact that that's a really positive retention, that you can swing that really hard without fear of it coming out of your hand. So people say, well, it's too short. Well, that's because of the fact that you're not swinging it hard enough. I often recommend that this be done close to the ground. So for me, it would be more of an option if I'm got a log in front of me and I'm processing wood, that I'm on my knees while I'm doing it, so that I don't have a chance of it coming back and hitting me. If I'm standing up and doing something, the chance of it coming down and hitting me in the leg are greater. So this is one that I recommend that it's done either on a block in front of you that's higher up, or you're on the ground on your knees over a log or something like that. So this is more of a use-specific tool. Unless you're really skilled or you're striking away from yourself to limb, something we need to make sure that the customers know that they need to take care of. This one is also the same danger, but because of the fact that it's lighter, it's easier to control. This is 2 pounds on 16 inches, and as hard as you can swing it, it'll work. So, any questions on that one?
Is that part of the velvet cut line too?
This is the velvet cut, yeah. I'm working through all the velvet cuts first. Yep. And the velvet cuts have like a satin polished finish to them, and that kind of helps you, outside of patterns, it helps you identify which is which. The next one is our Hudson Bay on a 2 pound. So it's basically the big brother of the little one, but this is also that 2 pound. You also probably want to be on the ground or kneeling when you're using it, because it's going to have that tendency to want to hit you in the leg. In fact, most of these, minus the big felling one, is the only one that probably wouldn't hit you in the leg if you tried it. This one has got a nice wedge to it, so you can do some splitting with it. The offset to that is that the eye is short, so that if you get it into a round to split and it gets buried and stuck, if you pull up on the handle and the head stays still, there's a good chance you're going to start messing with the connection here, and it may become loose. So that's something that the end user, if they're not familiar with this style, is something that we may want to suggest to them. The way I get around that is if I get it stuck, I'll take a piece of firewood and I'll hit the steel, the top of the head, and get it worked loose, as opposed to trying to use the handle to get it loose. So the handle is to swing, not so much to recover. That makes sense? But this is all very popular because it's got so much weight to it for light splitting. And I'm assuming that a lot of the paddlers are not taking down large trees or even any.
They're not supposed to take anything green. Right. You know. Can you show them that one is flat?
Oh, sure.
Compared to the
fact. So you see how it's almost a flat bevel? Are you talking about this way or this way?
Yeah. Well, either way.
Yeah.
Because then there's more surface, like you said, to stick in the wood.
Yeah, it's a bigger bevel, so it'll actually pop the wood a little sooner and faster for splitting, as opposed to like this one, which has got a little bit of a concave to it, you know. So this is a very popular camp axe because of the fact that it's heavy, and I say heavy, 2 pounds is about the most you can probably swing one-handed without starting to get tired. And we'll go over the recommendations for application after I get through these. The next one is it's called the Bad Axe Boys Axe, and that's a marketing name, not so much a industry name. Typically these are just called boys axes. This is the velvet cut. This is a 2 1/4 pound head, so it's heavier than the Hudson Bay. It's called a Dayton pattern, and it's got a taller eye on it, so there's more stability in this handle and head connection, so it'll handle splitting a lot better. Plus, with the longer handle, you get more head speed going and more inertia to split. This makes a very good limbing axe as well, and for bucking small stuff. This is actually one of my favorite tools to use because it's light enough that it's not going to wear me out, but heavy enough to get some serious work done. In fact, I actually wear one in a pouch on my belt as a faller's rig for limbing and for driving wedges and stuff when I fell trees.
Can you tell me, you know, when I look at the axe, it's not symmetrical. Drops in a little bit.
Yep.
Is there a reason?
Yeah, it's called the hang. So the idea for the term hanging an axe, or even the idea of getting the hang of it, comes from hanging an axe. So hanging an axe upside down, when you put the head on, you strike the bottom, and that actually brings the head onto the handle through inertial energy. So that's the process of hanging, is to put the head on the handle. Okay. Sometimes, depending on the axe head, you can adjust the pitch of how that's going, and you can bring it down a little bit with shaping the eye, and it's called a closed hang, as opposed to an open hang. As if you're changing the distance between the heel and the handle. If you were to put this on the table, it basically touches the table almost directly in the center of that bit. Whereas if it was open hung, it would be just in the top, or closed, it would be close to the bottom. Normally you want to try and hit either the center or just up into a third, because you're gonna, when you take a swing at it, the way that you step into something and the way that your eye and your hands connect, you usually are in line with what you're striking, and it's just a natural tendency to do that, because this is now an extension of your arms. Okay, if you didn't have the axe in your hand, you'd still be trying to hit it with your hand the same way. Now it's just an extension. So if you drew a line from the heel to the toe to your hand, technically now this is the new line as opposed to this. And you want to be able to hit that straight on. If it was too far forward, too far back, and you'd either be hitting the heel more or the toe more, and you're not being as efficient. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Yeah, absolutely. It's geometry.
Geometry, yeah. A lot of geometry in axes. So we got one more velvet cut. This is, I call it the old man, because it's 4 pounds on a 36-inch handle. And it's technically a felling axe. So it's the same steel, 5160, and it's got a convex edge on it, which means that it's slightly rounded. And that's more of a traditional way of setting a bevel on an axe. Now, because of the fact that this is a felling axe, 4 pounds out there, that's going to get you tired. But 4 pounds coming straight down isn't as bad. So a lot of guys use this for splitting more so than they do for felling. Normally, I don't. If I do fell, I usually use a lighter axe, like a 3.5 pound. Even that half a pound is significant, especially when you're swinging at this length. So I'm guessing that most of the customers are going to buy it mostly as a splitting axe. So if that's the case, then it's not as big a problem. And as you can see, it does have a relatively nice wedge to it, so it does make a good splitter. Now we're going to go on to the other premiums. Start right here. All right, the other premium line is called the Woodcraft line, and it started out with this. This is the first design that I came out with. It's called a pack axe, and it is a 2-pound head on a 24-inch handle. And we'll get to the handle lengths a little bit later. Make sure you remind me off my list over here. So what's different about this is that I took a boy's axe and I modified it to lighten it a little bit and to give it a bearding so that I can choke up on it. And the reason I want to do that is oftentimes when you're trying to start a fire, you need to make tinder or shavings, or even like we call them feather sticks and stuff like that. So this axe allows you then to get behind it and push straight down, as opposed to grabbing it out here and not having the leverage to get behind the blade. Okay, so that's part of what the bearding is for. Question?
Nope, just learning new stuff.
Sure. Another thing about
Exciting.
this is that it's got a flat grind to it, so it actually acts like a knife at that point. You can use it as a knife. There's very few things that you can do with a knife that I can't do with this axe. Another thing about it is that it's got a 90-degree spine on top, and that is to use the ferro rod to throw sparks to start a fire.
Oh, to just that low?
Check that out if I can. What's that? Throw my pants on fire?
Yeah. Step back.
And it's also got a hardened pole, so you can't strike steel with it. Nails, spikes. I was telling the other guys that I hit the trailer hitch to get it unfrozen last winter. So it's the same 5160 steel as our velvet cuts, but this has got what they call a forged finish on it. This phantom bevel on top, this recess, creates a higher center line down the middle. I want to be able to, I don't want it to be flat this way. As you can see, the knife rocks, okay? And that phantom bevel allows me to have a space so that when I get it in and stuck, that it gets pinched in the middle, and because of the phantom bevel, it allows me to release it. So I spend less time pulling it out of the tree and more time striking the tree or trying to split the round. It's hung proud with a wood wedge, and this is our #1 seller. It also comes on a shorter handle.
So can you tell them what you mean by hung proud?
So hung proud, so the handle sticks out the top, okay? And the reason being is that if you look from the side, it's actually mushrooming over a little bit. So that mushrooming effect helps with head retention, so that the head is less likely to come loose or come off. That's what's called hung proud of the top of the head.
It's that way because you drive the handle further through the eye when you're hanging the...
Yeah, the handle comes out. In fact, the way we do it, the handle actually sticks up almost 5/8 to 3/4 of an inch. And then we wedge it, and then we actually go back and we actually take it on a belt sander and actually grind off until we get to that height. And we still have that much motion on the side. And then we set the steel wedge after that. Now this is the same head, but on a 19-inch handle. And just by changing the handle, it changes the way that the axe feels and acts how it works. So depending on your application or the end user, if they want something that was still had the attributes of this head, but something that was shorter, this is a good option. It's a little bit more packable. But in fact, I ended up showing a buddy of mine, and I handed him both axes. And I said, well, what do you think? He says, wow, I like both of these. I said, well, can you tell me the difference? I don't know. He said, completely different axes. I said, no, it's the same head on different handles. And he goes, I didn't even recognize that. But because of the fact the way it feels and the way it handles just with a different handle is significant enough. So that's one of the reasons that we put it on 2 different handles, is to maximize the usability of this head. Now the newest one in the Woodcraft line is called a Camp Carver, and it's hyphenated, Camp-Carver. And the reason being, was that?
Not in Celerant.
And the reason being is that it's a camp axe and can be an entry-level carving axe. Oftentimes what you do in bushcraft or in carving is also what you would do at the camp. You know, or guys that don't want to spend $500 on a custom carver, this is a good entry-level one. Plus, they don't have to be afraid to take this in the woods with them. Most people would never take a carving axe with them in the woods. This is the same thing. It's got a 25-degree flat grind, 90-degree spine, hardened pole, and it has its lineage in the old riggers axes, or the old half hatchets, carpenter axes. And this one comes on a 16-inch handle. And this one, because of the fact that it's a hatchet eye as opposed to a boy's eye. It's a lot smaller, okay, but it's also lighter, so it can handle that. Sometimes the eye size is relative to the head weight. The more heavier the head, the stronger the connection you need to the handle, the larger the eye that you need. But since this is only 26 ounces, I can get away with a large hatchet eye. And because of that, that makes this portion a little bit smaller, and it feels a lot more comfortable in my hand now when I'm push shaving, okay? I also went and we rounded the underside of the pole so that it fits the web of your hand comfortably. So when you choke up on this, this should feel really nice and smooth and very comfortable, especially if you're going to be doing a lot of push carving that way. That's going to create a hot spot unless it was smooth and rounded. This is becoming our #1 seller. In fact, we can't make them fast enough at this point. Hopefully we're going to come out with a longer version of this as well, so that it does the same thing. We have 2 different handles on the same head, so we can have something a little bit longer, a little bit more leverage.
And that doesn't have the phantom bevel.
This does not, and the reason it does not is that it's not considered like a forest axe like that is, where I'm actually trying. I'm probably not going to try and take down a tree with this. In fact, if anything, I'm just going to be cleaning off limbs, or I'm going to be basically chopping my way in, as opposed to this. I'm supposed to try and get more work out of this in situations where, you know, trees are leaning and stuff. This is usually done with stuff that's already on the ground. And this is another one that I would probably either do on a block or kneeling. Unless you're really good and you got more control, the tendency is to come down and you may end up hurting yourself. So I have a list here, which is nice that you brought up some topics that you want me to cover. History of the Council Tool. They're out of North Carolina, Lake Waccamaw. We're about 30 miles west of Wilmington on the coast. So you can throw a rock and hit the ocean. It's in where the plant is pretty much in the same area where John Pickett Council back in 1886 started his forging company. He was making tools for the turpentine industry, and he couldn't find tools that he liked, so he started making his own, and then everyone else found out he was making really cool tools, and he stopped making turpentine and just started making tools, and that's what basically brought us here today, I guess. The one thing that I like about it is that it's still family owned and run here in the United States. We're one of the last American axe companies, and it's in a county that there's not a lot of jobs, so it gives a lot of guys locally a livable wage by working for the company, which I like. Too many times companies will sell out and they'll move to the bigger cities, and the people left in the rural areas are sometimes hard pressed to find jobs that they can make a living at.
So it's all U.S. made. It's a U.S. company. They founded you. Where did you guys get like your start? Was in the fire?
Actually, back in 1886 was the turpentine axes and scribes. So turpentine is made from pine trees. You take sap from pine trees, and in order to get sap out of a pine tree while it's still standing, is that you scar it. So they a cat face on it. So those scars then leak sap, and then they boil the sap down to make turpentine. But when turpentine started to become produced chemically and not naturally, that the turpentine industry slowly went out. So they transitioned from turpentine axes and scribes into other axes and other forgings. But yeah, we are probably best known for our firefighting tools. We also make a lot of sledgehammers, pick bars, pry bars. There's 4 industries: the OEM and contract work that we do for the government, industrial, fire, and then the logging, camping, and premium axe lines.
And you forge your own everything.
Yeah, we drop forge everything, pretty much. We even drop forge shovels. We make a U.S. Forest Service grade shovel that starts out as a piece of steel like this. And,
and drop forging process.
So a drop forging process, if you think of it as like a mold, but it's hardened steel, and the bottom half of the mold is on a plate on a deck, and then we have two large columns with a larger 3,500 pound steel plate that we put the other side on, and it looks like a F-350 standing on its end. And they put a billet or a section of cold rolled steel that they shear. They have a machine that will shear 1 3/4 steel like butter. Snaps it off. They push it through an induction forge, which is electric coil forge. And when it comes out the end, it comes out yellow. The guy grabs it with tongs, sticks in the machine, presses the button, and it comes down and slams it down. And we hit it 4 or 5 times, and it forces that steel to flow into the dies. And every time it comes down, he's got to pick it up a little bit to release it so it doesn't get stuck. So he's actively working this thing as it getting, and then the extra steel that comes out is called flash. So we actually use more steel than we need to make one head. So when he's done, it looks like an axe, like a flounder, like a fish, with steel spread out. And then he passes to the next guy. The next guy then trims off, puts it in a machine, and it comes down and cuts the outside flash off. And then it goes on the conveyor to another guy who picks it up, puts it in a machine, and it punches the eye. So one axe takes 17 seconds for 3 stations.
Wow.
And they're making one every 7 seconds. 7 or 8 seconds.
And how about the hardness?
So after the eye's been punched, it goes into a bin that it's cooled. And then when an order comes in so we make a bunch of heads and have them ready for finishing. So if we have a order of like 100 of a specific axe, we'll go out and bring in those heads. They'll get pre-ground to take the flash lines off, and then they are ground to shape. You know, they'll shape the bit and the cheeks to get it ready, and then they'll harden it. So they'll put it into another coil. So they'll put it in, the coil heats up the bit, and then it gets either quenched or it gets doused with water, I guess we'll call it water, but it's actually a chemical, alcohol, almost like radiator fluid type stuff. But we only heat the section that we need to be hardened. So that's why we see the rainbow on there. That technically the heating came to about there, and when it was quenched, it actually changed the structure a little bit. It got the crystals to line all in the same direction. Because steel is actually a crystal form of matter.
And the reason that you harden is to help keep the edge?
To help keep the edge and to make it durable. Right. So this section is soft and can take shock better. So you don't want the whole head to be treated,
too brittle,
because then it's going to be too brittle. But we want the blade to be, and these are also, the poles are also hardened as well, but they're different hardening. So the idea is that you have enough there to keep sharpening it without getting into soft metal so that you don't have a bad edge. You're always able to maintain a relatively sharp edge on it. It does take some energy to get a good edge, but as long as you're not chopping in dirt or dirty wood or against nails or whatever, you should be able to maintain an edge for a lot longer.
So then when people sharpen their axe with a grinder, they take off the nice hard edge, and they heat it up at the same time, and the further they go up there, then the more good material they're taking off. And eventually it won't hold an edge because now it's all soft.
Right. Now, it takes a lot of heat, a lot of heat buildup. You really have to go at it and let it sit there. Oftentimes, like on my regular axes, I'll take an angle grinder with a flap disc, a sanding flap disc, and because I'm not sitting still, I'm moving it, and I'm checking the temperature, I can still touch it. It's got to be upwards of 450 degrees or more to start to mess with it, like closer to 600 degrees.
And you're not taking big material off
Right.
that. You're just
Right. So if done correctly, you can use an angle grinder to sharpen an axe, or at least set the bevel on it. But it's the guys that are pushing on it on an angle like a bench grinder, and it's turning blue and pink and purple and stuff. Yeah, those are the guys that are they're warming it up too much that they're softening the steel, and you're not able to keep an edge on it anymore. So sometimes you find axes at garage sales that's, or a flea market, the guy, yeah, I sharpened it for you. I'm like, great, thanks.
So I'm maybe getting ahead of you then. So are you going to touch on how to sharpen them?
I could.
before he gets to sharpen, one thing I thought was interesting, he talked about how, like earlier when he said he gave his trailer hitch a whack to unloosen it. Most of these axes have the pawl that's hard enough to be able to do camp chores with or whatever without hurting them. But then some of them are designed with a hard, like a hammer pawl to use, but it's almost like when you give customers permission to do that by telling them it's made for that, then they'll just hammer so hard. You don't necessarily need to do that. But
And to go off of what Tim said, I actually had it written down too. Can you go through and just touch base which ones have like a hammer pull or could be used as a hammer pull?
Sure.
Because I know some you definitely don't want to be used.
So let's talk application. Let's say that it's a camper who's tenting camping and he's making his own wood stakes to tie his tent down. Any of these can work. In fact, even this one, which doesn't have a pole, you can still strike on the side if you really wanted to move. You got that. So yeah, so if it's wood, or even like the little titanium tent stakes and stuff, as long as you're not, going into really, really hard ground, most of these, even the ones that aren't hardened, can handle that. But I'm not saying that you're not going to see any damage or any dings and stuff on the end, okay? But that is different than full-out mushrooming. And I think that's the difference between a hardened pole won't mushroom, where a soft pole will. And we're talking like excessive, like building a house, kind of nails, stuff like that. So right now, I would say most of those can handle that task. Once you start jumping into like light construction or even demolition, or even guys that are going to be building their own shelters and stuff like that, who've got steel hardware and stuff, that's when the Woodcraft line, which have the dedicated hardened pole, would be able to handle that type of abuse. I mean, I've seen guys have pick walnuts on a granite rock, busting open walnuts, and they're hitting the rock with their axe. This one can handle that without having too much damage. This one, you're going to see that soft pole is going to see a lot more damage. So a lot of that comes down to the end user.
Can you take the shoes off that one just so they have a visual?
Yeah, so you can see the coloration too on that one. You can see that it's been hardened. Like I said, you can use this, and you shouldn't be afraid to use it to put in wood stakes and stuff. But this is designed. I drove a 12-inch 3/8 bright spike into an elm log with this. Now, would I ever have to do that? Well, if I was building a shelter and that's the fasteners I had, then that's what I'm going to use, kind of thing. And oftentimes the hardened pole is more of a, because there's not a lot of axes that have hardened poles, we use it as a marketing tool. Something like, it's what other people don't have, sells. Something unique, something different, something they don't have to be afraid to use it. That make sense? All right. So now let's talk about the difference between a hatchet and an axe.
Hold on 2 seconds. We used to have one from Wetterling called the Bushman axe, and a lot of that had that hammer pull on it. They no longer make it, but that's, if a customer's asking for that, that's what they're looking for, is that hammer pull.
In fact, there's a lot of people that
They no longer make that. We can't get it anymore. This is what
a lot of people have,
for that.
even people who own the Bushman prefer this one now, even though they still own the old one. In fact, because of the fact that the Bushmans are hard to find, guys that own them and don't use them are turning around selling them for twice what they paid for them, and then buying 2 of these. So the difference between a hatchet and an axe, the best way to describe it is all hatchets are axes and not all axes are hatchets. A hatchet is a type of axe. Typically, a hatchet is defined by its head weight and the handle length, or how long it is. Once you get to about 1 3/4 and 16 inches or 18 inches, that's the borderline between a hatchet and an axe. Anything that's difficult to swing one-handed for any length of time is usually, and you have to use 2 hands, is usually considered an axe. You can swing it one-handed, relatively easy, we consider that a hatchet. So a lot of it comes down to a customer, depending on how they want to use it. Oftentimes the question is, I want to get an axe, I don't know which one to get. Then you always ask them, what are you going to ask this tool to do for you? You know, what chores, what tasks are you looking to do, so that you can then steer them the direction. If they're like, yeah, I want to drive wedges to fell trees, okay, now you're looking at a boy's axe or a felling axe. If I just want to clear trail or make kindling for a small fire, you know, then you're looking at a Hudson Bay or even a belt with a saddle axe. So application is important, and the only thing that trumps that is if somebody really wants something and they just want permission to own it, like we talked about earlier. If someone's hell-bent on having a saddle axe, and they really not asking for advice, they just asking what you think, say, I think it's a great axe, I think you should get one today. In fact, we're giving out permission slips to own more than one today. You know, and so, same idea. So you're still offering them the chance for them to ask for advice and ask for input, but you're giving them permission to spend the money how they want. And buying more than one is always better.
Most of our customers, almost every one of these things, aside from the bigger ones, are going to work for what they want them to do. So it's really just going to come down to listening to what they might already want and affirming that choice. Like he just said, you know, there's a lot of subtleties. You could get into talking about details about all the differences between the two, and it would be like offering them advice about 4 different canoe routes at the same time. You're just going to confuse them until they won't be able to make a choice. So it is good to have all this knowledge, and we need to know the differences. But in the end, they're all of these things are going to be good choices for them. Some obvious differences of a great big felling axe or a big splitter or different things like that. And they're going to have to be careful with all of them if they take them in the boundary waters, because with the ones that are heavier with the short handle, you know, people are not going to think, oh, maybe I should kneel down, or I should put this wood up on this, or so some of that is just going to have to be telling them there are different ways you got to use this. You know, it's a
knife on a stick.
It's a knife on a stick. It's very sharp.
Very sharp. Knife on a stick. And that kind of goes in with the methodology of choosing an axe. Like I said, depending on the application. Oftentimes you'll see people that will choose this one, and I'll ask them, so why did you choose such a small hatchet? And they're like, well, it's not very intimidating. That's something that I feel I can control. And that's another thing, is depending on the person's experience and anxiety, we even call it, that will also direct what direction they're going to try and go when buying an axe. They're basically going to buy the smallest, most minimalist axe that they can get, so that they say they have one, but it's not going to be something where they feel that it's going to be outside of their wheelhouse. And which makes this a perfect example to sell to that type of person. It's very low weight. You hardly know it's there, but it's there in case you need it. Kind of like a fire extinguisher. Nobody carries around in their back pocket, but they know where one is in an emergency in case they need it. And then there's the guys that they just want the coolest thing on the planet. You know, doesn't mean they're going to use it. And that's when you jump into the specialty ones. You know, you tell them you can start a fire, you know, with the spine. You know, they're like, well, I got a Bic lighter. Okay, well then that's not your axe. Then maybe this one is. You know, you try and figure out where they want to go with it. And there's a number of videos. I'll share some links and stuff that you can pass around. We have a lot of guys that I've been able to work with that have done very good videos on how they use the axes safely. And it's possible maybe you guys can make up some cards that you can hand to the customer and say, here are some online resources that if you want to learn how to use an axe better, as opposed to taking up any more of the salesperson's time at the counter and stuff. It's more of a benefit type thing. Or maybe even have some links on your website. Hey, check out our website for more information on how to use your axe, so that they maybe have a little more confidence is what we're trying to build, especially with something that's very dangerous. Another one is the hanging length. So most of these newer axes have got a short eye. The heads aren't very tall, okay? As opposed to a boy's axe. So, even though the lugs come down a little farther, this is a lot more connection between the head and the handle. Okay, it's a lot more stable and more secure. Okay? But technically, we use the same handle in this one as we do our, well, not so much this one, but we use the same eye on a lot of these axes and the same handles. Okay, so when I trim this one, once I get it in there, that head's going to come a lot farther down. It's going to come down like that. Okay. Which means that the top gets cut off. So I'll start with a 24-inch handle, but once I get it hung and trimmed off, now it's 23 1/4. Okay, and when the customer measures it and sees that it's not 24 inches, they think that it's a false advertising or whatever. Most people are not going to feel or know the difference between 3/4 of an inch on the entire length of a 24-inch handle. It's more of a principle to them. If it was longer and it didn't fit in the toolbox or tackle box because of it, I can understand them being more upset that way. So what we like to say is that instead of giving the overall specs as what's the total length, you can at least, on the website you can say it's between this and this, between 23 and 24. But we always say that it's hung on a 24-inch handle. And this one is hung on a 19-inch handle. And then a little asterisk saying that the overall length will be less because of the shortened head size on these axes. So it's better for me to secure the head as low as I can to make sure it doesn't go apart and cut it a little bit short than to say that, yes, it's exactly 24 inches when I'm done.
Yeah.
Do phone orders, you'll probably get that question. It's probably I mean, it's not the most popular question, but a lot of people ask.
We got about 10 minutes left on our space on the recording, but that doesn't mean you have to stop.
Could you talk a little bit about care and sharpening?
Sure.
What does the customer need to do once they get it home to make sure that it stays a good tool for their lifetime?
Do you guys carry any sharpening stones, or?
We have the puck, and we have the Gransford's file.
Okay.
We have,
You have a landscape puck or what?
We have a landscape puck. We have
Gransford's puck.
the ceramic stone from Gransford's Brooks. We have the axe diamond file, and then the sharpening file.
We have a tri-stone from Landscape.
Oh, yeah, and we also have a
little field sharpener.
We also have Ken Onion's desktop tool.
Okay.
That's a belt,
Sure.
driven one that they could sit on the bench.
Okay. So a landscape puck runs at around 180 grit, which is compared to a 7,000 diamond stone. It's like rubbing on pavement. And a landscape puck, in my opinion, from what you guys sell, is more for it's a field dressing. You know, I've got a nick that's really slowing me down and I want to rub that out. I really wouldn't consider a landscape puck to be something that I sharpen with. I'm repairing an edge with. Sharpening is a completely different animal, okay? Most of these premium axes they come pre-sharp. So for a customer to take it back to that, they would need a better puck. Maybe that three-sided stone would work. I'd have to look at it to see. There are pucks that we actually have available to our dealers that actually it's a 220 and a 400 that you can actually get a pretty good edge with, especially in the field. It may be something you guys look at. I can send you information and email or whatever. Right now, the puck that we use is #1 on the market. It's called an Arctic Fox. It's actually made by one of our Axe Junkies members. And
so 220 is more like sandpaper. Crazy sharp.
Yeah, but that's sharpening.
Yeah.
Whereas a landscape puck, in my opinion, is more for just.
It's more like
taking
for
out a
buffing
ding,
out.
right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So it all depends on what you're when you say about, let's talk about maintenance.
You want to buff
if you
out
want
the
to,
nicks.
right, if you want to take out the nicks to maintain, that's one thing. But if you want to sharpen it, that's a different maintain. You know. So I guess there's other techniques that people can use, and I guess I don't know how far outside of the products that you sell that you want to start giving advice on that. So
what about oil, rust,
For the handle.
handle?
So the handles on these premiums come with one coat of boiled linseed oil. Boiled linseed oil is not like lacquer. It's not an air dry. It's a polymer. So it actually will polymerize to create a coating, whereas varnish is more of an air, so like an epoxy.
Yeah, the linseed oil fills up the pores in the wood.
Right. And the boiled linseed oil goes on. You let it sit, and then you wipe it off. And then you do it in multiple steps, depending on how much of a protective coating you want. Now, boiled linseed oil also allows it to have a nice feel. Boiled linseed oil does not stick to the pads on your hands. So blisters are not from rubbing. Blisters are from gripping and moving the pad back and forth so it separates itself from the underlying layers of skin. And that's where your blister. A rash is rub. A blister is from working back and forth. So the handle should be able to move and slip through your hand slightly, but still have enough stick so when you grip onto it, it doesn't move. And that's the benefit of boiled linseed oil, is it does both. It makes it smooth and silky, but also will grab on when you need to really hold on to that axe. Whereas varnish, which is what you find at hardware store axes, which is more of a packaging for the handle so that it doesn't get dirty and doesn't absorb moisture and stuff in the shipping container. So yeah, I would put boiled linseed oil in light coats, let it sit for 10 minutes and then wipe it off and then let it dry overnight.
We carry the Watco oil. Yeah, finish out.
That works as well.
The same thing.
That does a pretty good job. A lot of guys like it. I'm still preferential to boiled linseed oil. I mean, it's been the standard for 90 years or more, and it was raw linseed oil before they started adding the dryers to it.
Right.
Boiled linseed oil is also a little bit toxic, so I would recommend using gloves. I mean, it's very subtle. I mean,
Don't drink it.
right.
Your hands
But
gonna fall off.
the wood soaks that up.
The wood will soak it up
And
until the
keeps
point.
your handle from drying out.
It helps you up. And I try to let the end soak up as much. You lose more moisture through the end grain than you do the side grain. So handles that dry out, they'll dry out and they'll check and they'll crack because the moisture is leaving through the end grain. So oftentimes what I'll do is I'll sand this smooth again to open up the pores and actually put it in a cup and let it soak the boiled linseed oil up inside. the stuff inside will never really dry out, but the outside will then create a film which then keeps the moisture from going in and out through the seasons. Like in the winter when it's really dry, the handle will shrink a little bit, the head will come loose. When it's 95 and 100 and it's almost raining outside, it's so humid, then it swells back up again. So in order to maintain that, what I'll do is like in the summer when it's fat, when it's got a lot of moisture in it, that's where I'll go and I'll seal the ends to make sure that the moisture doesn't leave when it dries out in the winter.
So you soak it on both sides?
I would, yes. And then just the handle part, where you hold on to, you don't lose as much moisture that way, but it is a good protectant. Because even if you leave it out in, like let's say you leave it out overnight and you get dew on it, or even if it rains, unless you've got multiple coats of boiled linseed oil on it, that water will get in there and will actually start to raise the grain a little bit, and then it'll be fuzzy. And then you need to go back and, in order for it to feel good, you need to go back and sand it and then re-oil it. So maintaining an axe handle is an ongoing, you know, daily, if not, if it's a daily drive, it's a daily thing. If not, then it's, you know, once a month. This one has very minimal grain runout, and because you see it there, it's only because that's thicker and it's passing through the grain. But you want the grain orientation to be in line with the head, and the reason being is it makes it a little bit more stiff and more durable, and has less tendency to crack. Whereas if it's running this way, it will, there is a chance that it will snap. Oftentimes it doesn't. I've got a handle that's the opposite direction on a boy's axe. I've been running it for a year and a half now and no issue at all. Yeah. So,
but it is a nice feature to point out to customers, and you know.
Yeah, the grain orientation is good on these.
I would probably get about 10% of our customers who want to talk about this issue, and they really want us to go find one that's got great grain, that doesn't have run out, etc. They generally know more about it than what we do. But so that's a good thing to know. What are they talking about? What are we looking for? What should we try to find? I would try to steer away from not bringing that up in the conversation, other than just to say these handles are hand-selected. Premium handles are excellent handles.
Hand-selected.
And they're hand-selected when they come from the factory. They already looked at that. But there's like a 5 to 10% of our population who really are interested in that. And I would let them lead those conversations versus us bringing it up and getting into a complicated thing that it's hard to, because really you're looking at it with your eye and then you're trying to compare all these things, and you could spend days, and we've sent axes back and forth to customers to try and please them, and it's kind of really difficult and unnecessary unless you have to do it.
That brings up a point. You may have covered it. I might have missed it. But your material, you're a U.S. made company. You've been around for a long time. But where do your materials come from? Are they all U.S. sourced? Yeah.
All of our steel and hickory is American.
Okay.
And we have a local.
Where do you get the hickory then?
The steel, which we took.
The hickory?
The hickory is sourced in Tennessee, Kentucky.
Okay.
Tennessee, Kentucky, and Southern. Yeah, all American source steel and everything. And then our leather supplier is out of Ohio. So it's all American made stuff.
Do we sell replacement handles? Say they break the handle, or is that something that the customer would even want to do, is replace the handle?
Some would want to. Some would want to. We do have a warranty thing where it's 30 days on the handle and lifetime on the head, as long as it's not been abused. And then those warranty things, normally if it's something that, well, let's say they snap a handle, 2 weeks in, and we can tell that it was a problem with the handle itself, or the way that it was hung, or whatever, that's the fault of us as a manufacturer, then you guys replace that axe, get the other one back, hopefully, and then we credit your account on your next order. There's no we're going to send you one out to do it. So hopefully you'll have more than one sitting around of each model that way. This way, because you guys are the ones that are dealing with the customers, it's easier than for them to try and then get a hold of us, and then we're like, well, who'd you buy it from? And it's four or five more steps we got to go through than if you guys just handle it yourselves. But yeah, having replacement handles may be a good idea. Only a handful, maybe 2 or 3 of our dealers actually carry replacement handles.
We have a couple already.
I thought I saw.
But we don't have all of them. So hopefully by the end of summer we'll have a couple. We only carry like 2 to 3 of the other
I mean,
companies.
they're pretty hard to break.
Yeah.
But after 30 days, will they still send it back to your service center and for a charge or fee or something? And you guys use them or no?
No, we don't. We don't
So this is-
rehang. It gets to the point where it's not cost effective. Especially if we're paying shipping both ways, and it's already been shipped out the first time. Right, it's the same axe. Yeah.
And it's pretty industry standard wide that the handles are not going to be covered, and then mostly because there's
Replaceable.
wood and they get dried out, and if you have it sitting around they may not be cared for or stored properly, and that's not a manufacturer's defect, that's an owner's defect. But if somebody were to buy it, like within, like you said, 30 days, we've had it stored for a while, so then it's going to be covered. But
My question was more about the guy that uses it for a while, breaks it, and he just wants to replace the handle.
Yep.
So,
yeah, we do not.
I know it's not going to be warranted. I just know I need a handle.
Yep. So we have a couple replacement handles. We'll be getting, hopefully within the next few months, the next 2 shipments, we'll try to add a couple each shipment on. So yeah, so hopefully we'll have those. We've been getting a kind of a rash of.
Is there videos on how to do that?
On rehanging, sure.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. We do not offer the replacement. Like we're not. We talked about it. Right now we are not at the point where we will actually replace it for them. So they could buy one and then we would
Do it
replace it.
themselves.
They would have to do it themselves.
Well, that makes sense.
Right.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of liability issue.
Yeah.
But most guys,
It's just
if they're
for
like
us
me, they're just
time
going to
and
want to
effort
handle it and do it.
We just don't have the
It's just
manpower to
they'll
do
watch
it.
it,
We're
how to
also
do it,
split
yeah.
thin as it
I
is.
broke
Plus,
it
there
over.
are.
Yeah, exactly.
I know
just
at
a
least
whole
2
extra
dozen guys
process.
online that you could pay to have them rehang an axe.
Right.
And there's lots of guys out there, lots of resources, just knowing where to find them.
Oh, okay. I didn't see that.
There's also, you started this group, you monitor this group online on Facebook called Action Piece. And there's guys on there that will even help you step by step to do all this stuff, or tell you, how many coats of blow they put on, or how long they leave it, or what, when they do it at different. There's all kinds of people that want to help doing that stuff. There's also a ton of people who don't understand that this isn't a tool that doesn't need that kind of work. So lots of people we might deal with as customers will buy an axe and set it in, maybe even put it away for 2 years and then get it out and the head will be loose because the handle's dry and they never really took care of it, or they didn't think that they needed to do anything.
Well, when I was brought up, we just stuck them in a pail of water.
Yeah, well, that will
if you can
expand
do
the
that
wood,
anymore,
but
yeah.
it will,
Well,
the
idea behind that is that
Just
that's a
about.
temporary fix.
Okay.
What happens,
This guy
and I
said
wouldn't
do
recommend it. And the reason being is that when water gets drawn up into a handle like that, the pressure actually causes cellular damage to the wood. Okay, it makes it so fat and wants to hold so much water that it will create cracks in the cell structure. Then when that water leaves, that cell structure collapses, and now your handle's even your head is even least worse.
Yeah.
It's even less or more loose. So it's more of a quick fix kind of thing.
I can remember that, having to soak it more.
Yeah. Yeah. Once you start soaking, and that's why the boiled linseed oil does fill that pore, but doesn't fill it like water does, because it doesn't evaporate.
we should probably get some of that to sell.
Yeah.
We can just buy it in quart cans.
Yeah.
I mean, we have the ballast oil.
Now that's more of a 3-in-1 type
Right.
oil for
So
lubricating
would you
stuff.
use that on the head?
You can use that on the head, sure. Sure. Some people do put boiled linseed oil on the head, like 1 or 2 coats. The problem is that once you start getting multiple coats on the head, that you start to develop a film, and that film will actually inhibit the slicing action of the axe itself.
Yeah, you need to wipe it. You don't want it goopy, just like your firearm.
Or even so, I mean, boiled linseed oil put on layers will still create a film that will actually cause, it's almost like glue. It actually will stop the axe from especially on dry wood, not so much green, but dry wood. Yeah, so
that friction and heat will cause that
to warm up and gum up.
Even more carpet glue.
Yeah, so just regular 3-in-1 oil. There's actually an oil that is made in Connecticut called Blue Creeper, and is a synthetic lubricating and penetrating oil that I use. Blue Creeper.
Blue Creeper.
Blue Creeper.
Yes.
Wow, that's not what I heard.
BlueCreeper.com. Actually, that's what I use. So what I'll do is I'll oil the head in Blue Creeper, and now I've got oil in the head. Then I'll go ahead and I'll put boiled linseed oil on the handle, and the boiled linseed oil can't stick to the head because the Blue Creeper's there. So then I can wipe it all down when I'm done. I don't have any boiled linseed oil on my axe head. Now, that's from a restoration. I'm selling it to a customer as a reconditioned axe. It's got to be pristine. It's a flawless handle, razor sharp. I mean, it's top end stuff. And that's the only reason I do it that way. There's no reason why you wouldn't be able to mix it. Now, by having that boiled linseed oil on there, in fact, I've even had guys, they'll put mineral oil inside their leather. Or they'll use open obs. They'll put open obs, leather conditioner inside, so that the sheath, sometimes the sheath will hold moisture that will actually cause the steel to rust.
Right.
It's not so much on Vegetan leather does that, but some of the chrome-based tannings will actually cause the axe head to rust.
Start rusting, yeah.
So what if you do get rust on? How do you treat that?
Depending on how much, if it's just a little bit, just triple aught
Sandpaper.
triple aught steel wool will do it, and with a little bit of oil, a little bit of elbow grease, or like a 3M pad, like a green 3M pad, will take a lot of it off. If it's really bad, you can actually take a braided wire cup wheel on an angle grinder and really go to town, depending on how much rust you got on it. But stuff like this that shouldn't see much rust, just refinishing steel wool is good enough.
There's a product that I have upstairs to clean some of the stuff up that we could get for customers, but you get it at a hardware store. It's called a rust eraser. It's like a big eraser, but it's got grit in it at different stages, just like sandpaper. And that kind of acts just the same way as the triple aught steel wool. And then that ballistol that we have, that stuff would be, good. Just that might clean up a lot of it anyway. By
Sure. Now a lot of it is just rehydrating. Once you hit a rusted spot with some oil, that oil will start to separate the rust from the steel over time, and that rust will start to flake off, even if it's just spots. Plus, the best way to get rust off an axe is to use it.
Yeah.
Just go ahead and spend 20 minutes processing some wood, and it's going to be off the clean pretty quick. I'm not sure what else. I'm hoping for some more questions.
We covered all my extra questions that I had.
You got the name of that puck that they're doing well.
The Arctic Fox and the Blue Creeper.
I got one more.
Yes, sir.
Just for a personal use, for going into the I'm going to limb and I'm